We are live.
This is Literary Roadhouse. One short story once a week. I'm Rami,
I'm Gerald.
And I'm Anais.
and this week we are discussing a story called The Signalman by Charles Dickens. And it introduces us to a man who meets a signalman, or the person who signals to trains back in the day. Story was set around the 1800s, I believe. And the signalman tells the protagonist in the story of a harrowing tale of this figure who does various motions and is perceived to be a ghost, and after which some really startling events occur. So it's almost like this ghostly figure is foreshadowing some impending disaster. And the signalman tells our protagonist that he last spotted this ghostly figure recently and cannot for the life of him understand what the ghostly figure is foreshadowing. What's the next disaster that's going to happen? Until the protagonist discovers what the figure had meant at the end.
Yay.
Ooh.
No
Cliffhanger, I
spoilers.
think. Almost.
When I see.
Okay, so what did you guys make of the story overall?
I really enjoyed it. I thought it was a really good read. I liked the story. I was taken along with the sort of mystery and the suspense, and it was. It's a shame. It would have been a good story for Halloween. I think it's quite
Yeah,
spooky.
I thought that too.
Yeah.
Yeah. Yeah. Rami, what did you think of it?
I liked it. I actually wasn't expecting it to be like a spooky story.
Mm.
So that caught me off guard, but I was pleasantly surprised. I actually had some chills.
Oh,
Mm.
well, I didn't think it was going to be spooky either, but this is actually the second spooky Charles Dickens story we've read on this podcast.
Mm.
What was the other one with the it was the guy at the trial. There was a it was like was it called The Trial or something like that?
Oh yeah, and there was a 13th juror, wasn't there?
That was a ghost.
Yeah.
The Trial for Murder, yeah.
Yeah.
Yeah. So we also discussed that one. So then I'm like, what's with Charles Dickens? I mean, it's also of that time. At that time, people were really into ghost stuff.
Yeah.
Um, but and also like he's famous for oh my god, I'm like blanking on it. The Christmas Story with the ghosts. The ghosts. I'm blanking on what
A
it is.
Christmas Carol.
A Christmas Carol. I'm like, it's not a Christmas story.
No.
Yes. So ghosts are a heavy theme in Charles Dickens' work in a way that for some reason I'm like surprised by, which makes me feel really dumb. Like, why am I so surprised by it?
Mm.
But in the overall, yes, I enjoyed it a lot. And I actually had to read that last paragraph 1,000 times.
Yeah.
Right?
Thank you,
Is that
because that's what
all?
I wanted to
Yeah.
discuss too.
Yeah.
Yeah. You want like the sentence structure, his syntax?
Yes.
Exactly, I didn't really make sense of it. I didn't read it 1,000 times, but maybe 3.
I mean, this has happened to me with some Dickens work before, and I think it's more indicative of how the way that we read and the way that we write has changed over time because this style was a lot more common back then. And I think he's like all in on this style. And for the most part, it flowed. But every once in a while, there would be a sentence where I'm like, okay, right. I would have to like cut out things between commas to get to the core sentence to be like, right, got it. I had to parse things in the middle of reading, most at the beginning and at the end. In the beginning, because I didn't know what he meant when he was saying the man stood at the door outside his box. I'm like, what box? What box? um,
Did either of you feel chills at any point?
Yeah.
When?
Yeah, I think when right at the end when you suddenly realise what it was and what was happening to the signalman, and yeah, you're sort of wondering whether he almost brought this upon himself, maybe, or something. But
Like
yeah,
self-fulfilling prophecy?
yeah, that sort of thing. Yeah.
mhm.
So Yeah, and I was, to be honest, I was expecting, because I've been forced to read some Charles Dickens in the past. Now, I find it very difficult. I find it quite sort of turgid, and I find the names he uses are so difficult to sort of get your head around. And it's supposed to be amusing and stuff, but you just think, why you choose that. But this just it read like a more modern story. It was very, very good. I liked it.
Hmm. For me, it happened, the goosebumps, when the signalman was telling the main character about the previous incidents that had occurred. About how he had seen this ghostly figure, and then the train crashed, and then the beautiful lady died. I was like, oh wow. And then he says, oh, and the next time was saying something like what you told me when we first met. And I was like, oh boy.
Yeah.
That's funny. For some reason, I didn't really get chills. I was kind of like, okay. I still enjoyed it, but I think for me, I had a more muted response to it. I don't know why I came into it. Like, once I saw it was Ghost, I was like, oh, okay. Yeah. It didn't have a surprise element for me at any point.
Okay.
Yeah. I mean, there was the plot twist at the end was still a twist. I didn't think it would end up. Well, actually, it was always a possibility that the Signalman would die too, or that they were all ghosts all along. Like there was just like I was expecting a twist, and when it came, yeah.
You've read too many short stories.
No, or I wonder, just like seeing a movie, I wonder if how much the setting counts. Like if you're reading it late at night or very early in the morning versus in the middle of the day.
Yeah, I read it. Late morning. Well, yeah, morning-ish. But yeah, I think also it's just like at the time when this story came out, ghost stories were very on trend, and now we've done them to death so many times that I think also after a while it's like you just know the ghost story patterns.
Yeah, I did. But to be honest, I didn't realize it was a ghost story until I was well into it. Like over halfway or something, maybe even 3/4 of the way through it. I was quite surprised, and I thought, "Ooh, it's spooky."
So one of the things I did some research afterwards that I learned was that Charles Dickens himself was in a really big rail crash, the Staplehurst rail crash on June 9th, 1865. It was passing over a viaduct, and the train jumped a gap in the line where the rails had been removed for maintenance. Why was the train even running? I don't know. And the cast iron viaduct fractured, and most of the carriages fell into a river below, and Dickens was in the first carriage that derailed sideways but didn't fall completely, and it was suspended at a precarious angle by the coupling of the coach in the front and held by the remainder of the viaduct masonry. So in movies when like the cars that cliff edge, he was in that one.
Wow.
And he helped rescue other passengers, was commended for his actions, and the experience had a profound effect on his subsequent life, which is funny because as I kept reading, with that in mind, as I thought about the story, all of a sudden the significance of the setting changed for me. Like, why did it have to be a railway? And it's a little bit like he keeps saying over and over, this signalman is very good at his job. He's very diligent, and even so, people are dying. People are dying all the time here. This is one of the most dangerous places you could possibly be. Like, just like this fear of the rail and of trains. And then I did more research, and apparently at the time, like how now people, the way that we talk about how different technologies are endangering our lives and our, like now maybe we have this anxiety maybe with self-driving cars or something like that. But at the time, trains were that thing, was that technology that people were like, for many reasons. One, because of how big they were, and two, because of how it was making work more impersonal. You have people like this man out alone, in Charles Dickens's view, possibly losing his mind. You just trust he's there, but you never see him. So all of a sudden, that took on a different spin. Like the scary part of the story at the time wasn't just the ghost; it was the impersonal nature of this type of work, the trust that you have to have in people that you don't even know, and even when you do get the best person on the job, people still die.
Yeah. Yeah, it's funny about trains. I like train journeys, but I found that whenever I go to a station, there's some sort of spooky feeling, and I don't know. I don't believe in picking up vibes and all that sort of stuff. But there's something about, and I've written lots of little short stories which are sort of strange things around trains, and I don't know what it is. It's something about it, and I think because you're quite often traveling like away from other people. You're traveling sometimes through countryside or round behind houses and things like that, so nobody sees you. You're there but maybe you're not there, that sort of thing. I don't know what it is, but I like trains.
Hmm.
They're good.
Yeah. I just want to pause real quick. I don't know if you guys are picking it up, but my microphone definitely is. It occasionally sounds like someone's cranking a lawnmower. It's actually the dog at my feet snoring. Um, so I'm watching my dog,
I can't hear it.
geriatric Rottweiler, my parents' geriatric Rottweiler while they're out of town, and he snores very loudly.
Oh,
Hmm.
no, can't hear it.
Yeah. Well, definitely will show up on the microphone. I'm even going to bother trying to edit it out.
Oh. That's what makes this the podcast that it is. We have dogs snoring. Not really.
Yeah, it's very sad.
Yeah.
So Rami, you said it gave you shivers. Do you think it was something about the writing style that led to that? Why do you think that was?
Yeah, I can't pinpoint it to something, but I guess one of the marks is a good story is when you're kind of so into it that you're not thinking about the writing or anything else, as if you're kind of as if the signalman is telling you what he's seen and what's been going on. It just seemed so like raw and authentic, like this person had a supernatural experience and he's telling his heartfelt thoughts about what's going on, and the fact that he kind of took the main character into his own little shed or post or wherever it was, and he's like, look, it happened like right here, that they brought this lady in, and then the main character kind of like moved back in his chair after and stuff. It was just a very real.
Mm.
Yeah,
So it sounds like the play-by-play was effective.
Yeah.
Yeah, because I guess you probably wouldn't have experienced this type of people, but I definitely remember signal boxes way back in the day where you had some guy who was manually operating with big levers and stuff, the actual signals, mechanical signals by the side of the track. So you had these signal boxes spaced out along the line. Now it's all done by CCTV and from a place about 30 miles away or something. And it was quite interesting that there's a town near here which is kind of sort of set in the 1920s or something. They're living on past glories, but they used to have there was a railway line that went across the main road into it, and they used to have wooden gates up until about 6 years ago or something like that. Wooden gates, and a guy who would come out of his little hut and open these gates manually and let the traffic across. And there was such a big furore when they replaced these gates with some cameras and a little man miles and miles away. That's part of the it's cute. It's sort of, but they still existed until recently.
And I think something that works really effectively, and I guess it's also probably overused in horror stories, is to have a character who's also incredulous, or skeptical, like most of the readers are, and then slowly have that person start to believe, and then the readers probably shift their opinion along with that person.
Mm-hmm. He also did this in the trial for murder, that the person whose eyes you were seeing this through was also very skeptical, and there was a lot of caveats about his own mental health. That happened in this one too. There was another one that was like, well, get checked out by a doctor, it could be hallucinations. There was a lot of that talk in the trial for murder and in this one.
Yeah
Which is funny again, because when you think of Charles Dickens as a man who's very intelligent, very well educated, but yet believes in ghosts, which is fine. A lot of intelligent people do, but he feels a need to like couch it in all of this caveats, just like constantly be like, and it could be this, but does that explain this? Right? Like he's constantly doing that in his short stories that involve ghosts in this way. Yeah.
Yeah.
Science
Did you read something that says Charles Dickens did believe in ghosts?
it's one of those things where at that time, almost everyone did. Like our own president at that time, right? Mary Todd Lincoln and Abe Lincoln like had a medium come into the White House. I think was that after Willie died. I don't remember, but like there's all these stories at the time that was sort of just like a thing that was in vogue, especially in the upper echelons of society on both sides of the Atlantic. So I want to see if there's a place where Charles Dickens is like, I'm going to come clean. Yes, I absolutely do. But in all of his writing, you get this sense that, of course, he does.
Yeah, because he writes it so well, I think, and as Rami said, he sort of takes you as a skeptic into the story, and the more you go in, the more you start to question your own beliefs, which is I think a real skill. So you just know that either he does believe or he has difficulty being skeptical about it all the time.
Okay, I just found it. This is from the Paris Review. Ghost Club, Yeats and Dickens, Secret Society of Spirits.
Wow.
Yeah, so it's saying the Victorians didn't stick to simple arguments about the existence of ghosts. They also argued about how, when, and why they might exist. Spiritualists attacked spiritualists over whether the supernatural should be classed as natural. Science discussed whether psychological or physiological factors were at play. Inventors, politicians, journalists, and madmen joined in too. So it was very popular at the time. Multidisciplinary pursuit. So one of these exploratory committees was the Ghost Club. It was founded in 1862, lasted about a decade. Its history stretches back to a group of Cambridge academics in the 1950s, and it includes Dickens.
Of course.
Yeah.
Very good.
Yup. Thank you, Google. How did people do this back in the day?
I don't know. They had books, I think. These weird things called books.
Yeah, but how do you just bang in a search term? Anyway, this is great. Yeah. And this is what I love sometimes, and this comes up a lot in the book club discussions, is a lot of times in the way that people write something, you get a lot of insight into their psyche. It's not just that he wrote ghost stories. There's people who write ghost stories who don't believe in ghosts, and you can almost tell by the way they write it. It's the fact that Dickens in this story and in other ones has to constantly do what he's probably doing in the Ghost Club. What all ghost hunters do when they believe, right? Where they're like, sure, you can explain phenomenon A with science, but what about phenomenon B, right? He's doing that in his stories in a way that people who believe in this tend to do.
Yeah. Yeah, it's sort of a foot in both camps type thing, but we know where he's most comfortable.
Right. And you know, you have to have that hedging, or else you do sound. It's crazy to have 100% conviction. You have to do that hedging, but you know, it's still fun that he like 100% had this Ghost Club with Yeats.
Fantastic, lovely, good old Chucky Dickens.
Yeah.
And just another comment about the writing. I think this is the first time I've ever seen a sunset described as angry. So it was the glow of an angry sunset.
Yeah, I would just say that I think his description of the location was fantastic. I think there was I don't know how he did it, but the way he created this sort of this almost like, well, you have the tunnel and then coming out down between these high banks either side. And the way that light didn't penetrate and all, he just creates a brilliant atmosphere for that location.
Yeah. No, and the fact that it was like a deep cut, the ravine. Yeah. I'm still reading about all of Charles Dickens' ghost stuff right now. But that's what I'm saying is I think the fact that it was a railway, one is it's just a great setting, period. And then the second part is this historical context of what happened to him, and also more broadly, all the anxieties that society had at the time about trains.
Yeah.
Yeah. Oh my God.
Dickens and ghosts, eh?
Yeah.
You've gone down a rabbit hole.
Down a rabbit hole. He was fascinated by the occult, a genius at evoking eerie atmosphere and powerful malign characters, and knew there was nothing like a spine chiller to boost circulation for magazines, which published his novels in installments.
There you go.
Anyway.
So it was all good marketing then.
It was. I think it was both. I think these things. Yeah.
No, as you say, I think you can't write these things as well as he does without having at least some possible belief.
Mm. Yeah. And going back to the prose and the setting, even though his prose, especially in the beginning and the end, I found some of the sentences sometimes to be, by our modern standards, pretty clunky. In the middle section where he was just doing the play-by-play, the part that Rami said gave him the shivers, it was pretty visual. Like in my mind, he was painting the picture that he wanted to paint very effectively.
Yeah.
The whole scenes in the hut, when the guy jumped back, like Rami pointed out, was really good. So like I'm wondering also why that happened. Where like when he's just giving you the play-by-play and he's just explaining, I did this, he did that, I saw this, he did that. It flows. But once he gets to like sensations and thoughts and things that gets very convoluted. Because that last sentence is what the guy thought in that moment. It was his impressions of something.
Yeah, and it sort of it culminates in that final the final paragraph, which still doesn't make any sense to me. I think it is the sort of clunky way that they constructed sentences back then, and delighted in making things as obscure as possible for people.
Well, yeah, though I think in this case also it's, again, that hedging. He's constantly hedging when he's talking about the ghost part of it. So now this guy at the end is like a bit of a believer. So he's like, I'm not going to tell you how to feel about the thing that I noticed, but please notice the thing that I noticed, that he did the same words and the same gestures as the ghost. Like that's that whole thing where he's like, I'm not saying that I 100% believe, but if you don't believe, you're not paying attention. Like it's one of those really convoluted, lot of caveats. I'm not a crazy person, but this was a ghost meandering logic circles.
Yeah.
I think that's why it's like that. It's anytime he does that, the sentence just like spins on itself.
Yes, because it is a bit like that, and it's you have to try and remember where he was in the sentence before he started veering off and coming back, because that whole paragraph is just one sentence.
Yeah.
It's crazy. It's
I was rereading it now, and I think, maybe in modern times there might be a few commas missing, but I think with the addition of those, it might make more sense. Where he says, which I myself, not he, had attached, and I think that attached applies to the gesticulation he had imitated.
Yes. Yeah, it's 74 words long, that sentence, which is pretty crazy.
Yeah.
Wow.
Yeah.
Only Dickens.
So I don't really have much else to say about the story, though. It didn't, like I said, it didn't really grab me in a way that, especially because on the book club, we read in November, Sing and Buried Sing by Jessamine Ward, which is also a ghost story, but it's so different. So different. Yeah.
And the book is a ghost story within a strong narrative. And this is a short story. It's still over 5,000 words, but it is a short story about a ghost story. So it is what it is. There's no sort of hidden depths or anything to it. It's
most of the depth I had to mine from doing outside research.
Yeah. Very good.
But again, that's one of those things where everything is in its context, in its place and time. Somebody alive at that time would already have come to it with the anxieties, this discourse, everything that was happening at the time about the railways.
Yeah.
So, are we ready for ratings?
Yeah, I think so.
Yeah.
Okay.
Yeah. I'll go with a 5. I really enjoyed it.
Okay, Rami?
Stop.
A 5.5, and I'm docking the half point because of that last paragraph.
Harsh.
I think it's a 4 for me.
Yeah.
Yeah.
I understand that. Yeah.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, but it was good. But
And it's strange. Whatever score you give it, you can't really justify it. It just, just that's what it is. Yeah.
yeah. All right. Well, it's game time.
Ooh.
Oh, and also, listeners, if we totally missed something and you're like a Dickens scholar, please
Oh,
write it.
yes.
Super
Yeah.
fan.
Yeah.
It might be.
Okay.
Yeah.
So I'm submitting Birdsong by Janavi Barua. Barua? Yeah.
Oh,
Gerald?
it's not. Yeah, there's a novel, isn't there? Bird Song. But
No.
okay.
It's we read on the podcast Birdsong by Chimamanda Ngozi Adichie. So it's the same title.
Okay. I'm reading. Well, I'm suggesting Black Power by Violet Bulawayo.
Okay.
Nice. Yeah, so the quiz time. The
It's quiz
game.
time.
Is it a train quiz? I feel like we did one recently.
Yeah. me too.
Yeah, and you would be correct to conclude that that's like the most logical thing that we would do. But since we had done a train, and I think I had given the train
Mm-hmm.
quiz recently, I decided to go to something else, which was kind of related, which was time. I'm trying to remember. I
Ooh.
think I may have given a quiz about time too, but it's a bit farther removed. So
Okay.
Very
hopefully
good.
this is still kind of
It'll be
new
fun.
to you.
Yeah.
Who shall we begin with? I would say, well, Gerald comes first on my screen.
Okay.
So, Gerald, this question is for you. A jiffy is an actual unit of time for A, 1/100th of a second, 1/1000th of a second, or 1/10,000th of a second.
That's interesting.
Yeah.
Wow. I'll say 1/10,000th of a second.
It's actually 1/100th of a second.
Oh, okay.
Wow. Anyone who's ever said I'll be back in a jiffy was a liar.
Yeah.
Yes. Well, I mean, they misuse time all the time. Like, hold on a second. I don't actually
That's
mean
true. Yeah.
or a minute. Anyway,
Wait a minute. Yeah.
Anais,
Mhm.
a month that starts on this day will have a Friday the 13th in it. Friday, Saturday, or Sunday.
Oh. Wait, what?
So if a month starts on Friday, on which day
Mhm.
will it have somewhere along the line a Friday the 13th in it?
If it starts on a Saturday?
Sunday.
Oh, really?
Yeah.
Okay.
Really?
Okay. Yeah, you're going to check, aren't
I
you?
didn't
now?
actually.
Yeah.
Yeah. Go ahead
No,
and
I
check.
just.
Go ahead.
Hmm. Oh, I guess that makes sense. Yes. Okay. Mm-hmm. Yeah.
Right.
I did it wrong in my head.
Gerald.
Yay.
When England and the American colonies adopted the Gregorian calendar in 1752, how many days disappeared? 9, 11, or 13?
I don't have a clue. I'll say 9.
11.
Oh.
Close.
We're going to read No Story next week.
All right. No, I'm happy these are making
Yeah.
you think. Anais,
Mhm.
so as we just said, the Gregorian calendar was adopted by Great Britain in 1752. But what year was it first introduced by Pope Gregory? 1564, 1576, or 1582?
82.
Yes.
Woohoo!
Yeah,
Look
it's
at you.
obvious, really. What?
All right,
Easy
Gerald.
question. Yep.
If you don't get this, Anais wins. So here we
Okay.
go. If the sun stopped shining suddenly, how many minutes would it take for people on Earth to realize this? 7 minutes, 8 minutes, 9 minutes.
Oh. Okay. I'm going to guess 9 minutes.
Oh, 8.
Oh.
Close. Yeah.
I should have learnt it's the middle one.
Yeah, it was.
Anais, I'll give you this anyway, and we'll do the tiebreaker just for kicks. But so what is the name of the field that deals with the end of the world or end of times? Eschatology, horology, or malacology?
What? Okay. Hmm. Eschatology, horology, or
Malacology.
huh?
Malacology. Yeah.
The first one?
Yep. Horology is the study of timekeeping, and malacology is the study of mollusks.
Very good. Not appropriate. Hmm.
And the tiebreaker was how many seconds are there in a year?
Oh, shoot. Yeah, lots.
I don't want to do the math.
No.
My brain's too tired.
Yeah, it's Sunday. It's...
It's
So,
a
you
huge
want to
number.
Do
You want-
tell us.
31,557,600 seconds in a year.
Wow.
Wow.
Yep.
That's a
Okay.
lot.
All right. So what are we reading, Anais?
We are reading Birdsong by Janavi Barua. But before you go, share with us any troubling thoughts you may have after reading the story. Reach out to us on Twitter at Lit Roadhouse or in our Facebook group for fans, the Literary Roadhouse Readers, or at our website, literaryroadhouse.com. Do you have a lonely job with a lot of downtime in a deep and cold ravine? Who does it? Try reading. Join the Literary Roadhouse Book Club, where we discuss full fiction novels every month. In December, we're reading the 2018 Man Booker Prize winner Milkman by Anna Burns.
No.
And lastly, we don't have jobs in a ravine, so we have no money to run a podcast. So I didn't finish this. I didn't
You're
realize.
making this up.
Huh? I'm making
You're
this
making
up.
this
Now,
up.
wait a minute. I started doing it, and then I got a call.
Yeah.
And then I forgot to come back to it. This is great. It was good until Anna Burns. Thank you, Anna Burns. Yeah. So lastly, no one died and left us an inheritance. No one did the story either. Man, I've been fried. It's been one of those weeks. But we have podcast expenses. So make a contribution at patreon.com/Literary Roadhouse. Every bit helps. It's going to go a long way. We have big projects in the future. And as always, share this podcast with the ghosts foretelling your doom. Until next time, read a good story.
Hey.